I want to start at the wrong end of this. Not at the beginning, where it would make sense, but at the part I keep coming back to, whether I want to or not. The night I broke rule number 2, I walked back into the station on my own 2 feet. Nothing followed me through the door. Nothing breathed against the back of my neck while I bolted the shutters. There were no claw marks on the porch in the morning. No blood. No torn clothing. None of the things you'd expect from a story like this. I want you to understand that clearly, because it matters. Whatever you're imagining right now, a thing chasing a man down a dark trail, it wasn't that. I climbed toward a fire that shouldn't have existed, on a ridge with no trail, following a voice I knew better than my own. And then I turned around, and I came home, and I survived. I made coffee at 4 a.m, with hands that wouldn't stay still, and I watched the sky go gray through a gap in the shutters, and I told myself I'd gotten away with it. That's the part nobody warns you about. Surviving isn't the same as getting away. Because I did come back, but I didn't come back alone, and I didn't come back the same. Some part of me stayed up on that knob in the dark, and something from up there came down in its place, and it has been with me every day since. I can't sit at a window without counting the trees. I can't hear my own name without flinching at how it's said. I walked back unharmed. That was the problem. I should tell you who I was, because it explains why the forest chose the lure it chose. For 15 years, I was a volunteer wilderness paramedic and a search and rescue team lead out of East Tennessee. I was good at it. I say that not to brag, but because it's the center of everything that went wrong. I had a reputation on our team, the guy who didn't turn back. Storms, dark, bad terrain, it didn't matter. If somebody was out there, I went and got them. People used to say it like a compliment. Hargrove never quits. I believed it about myself, the way you believe in something you've never had to question. Then there was a kid named Aaron Pruitt, 16 years old, separated from his group on a ridge during a storm that came in faster than anyone called. We searched for 9 hours. Then the incident commander suspended the operation. Lightning, hypothermia, risk to the team. Every reason in the book, and every reason was correct. I followed the order. I stood down. I walked back to the trucks in the rain with my radio on my shoulder, and I told myself the rule existed for a reason. They found Aaron the next morning, 200 yards from where I'd turned around. He'd been alive most of the night. I never went back to the team after that. I drifted. I drank a little, then more than a little, then stopped because I didn't like who I was becoming. And when I saw the posting for a winter caretaker at Hollow Ridge Ranger Station, solitary, remote, no public rescue duties, it read like a sentence and a mercy at the same time. A place where no one's life would depend on me. A place where I couldn't fail anyone, because there'd be no one to fail. I wanted a job with no one to save. I drove up that mountain, thinking quiet would fix me. The forest, it turned out, had read my file better than I had. The drive-in takes the better part of a morning, and for most of it, you'd swear you were driving into a postcard. The fire road climbs out of the valley in long switchbacks, gravel under the tires the whole way. The kind of road where you can hear every stone the truck kicks up against the undercarriage. Hardwood gives way to spruce the higher you go. Fog sits in the folds of the land in the early hours, pooled in the low places, like something poured. My phone lost signal at a bend the locals apparently call the 6 Mile, because that's exactly where the last bar dies and never comes back. After that, it's just you and the engine, and the trees getting older and taller and closer to the road. It was beautiful. I keep needing to say that because of what comes later. The light came down through the spruce in solid columns. A creek ran alongside the road for a while, loud and clean. I rolled the window down, and the air smelled like wet pine and cold stone. And for about 20 minutes, I felt something in my chest loosen that hadn't loosened in a long time. Then I passed the last sign before the station. It wasn't a park service sign. Those are brown and routed and bolted to posts, and there'd been plenty of them lower down. This one was a square of weathered plywood nailed to a spruce trunk, the paint flaking, the letters done by hand in a careful, deliberate stroke. It didn't say, "Welcome." It didn't give a mileage or a name. It said, "Obey the orders." I slowed the truck almost to a stop, looking at it. Somebody had taken the time to make that sign and to mean it, and to put it exactly where a person would see it last before the trees closed in. I told myself it was old. I told myself it was a joke some bored ranger had left for the next one. Then the road bent one final time, and Hollow Ridge Station stood up out of the spruce in front of me, gray stone and dark timber. And there was a truck already parked out front, with a man loading boxes into the bed, like the place was on fire. The man's name was Dell, and he'd been the caretaker before me. He was maybe 60, lean in the way men get when they've stopped sleeping, and he shook my hand too hard and smiled too much. He had the keys ready before I was out of the truck. Everything about him was set to leaving. His boxes weren't packed so much as crammed. There was a sleeping bag stuffed loose into the cab. He kept glancing past me down the road, like he was timing how long the light would hold. "You read fast?" he asked. "Fast enough," I said. He nodded like that was important, and handed me a single laminated card, edges soft with handling. "Station standing orders, 6 of them. You read them tonight, before dark, and you follow them like they're scripture. Not most of them, all of them. You don't get to pick." I'd worked under protocols my whole career. I almost smiled. "It's a checklist," I said. "I can handle a checklist." He didn't smile back. He looked at me for a long second, and something in his face was working hard to stay level. "It's not a checklist," he said, "and the one you're going to want to argue with is Rule 2. So I'm telling you now, while there's still daylight, and you can still hear me. Rule 2, especially Rule 2. Whatever it sounds like out there, you stay inside. Whatever what sounds like." He picked up his last box. "You'll know," he said. "That's the whole problem. You'll know exactly what it sounds like." He wouldn't go back inside the station. I noticed that. His coat was still hanging on a hook by the door. I could see it through the window. And he just left it there, rather than step over the threshold one more time. Dell drove off faster than the road wanted him to, gravel spitting out behind his tires. And then the sound of his engine folded into the trees and was gone. And it was just me. The first thing I did was walk the station, the way you walk any new post. It's habit. You learn the exits, the layout, the systems, and the more I walked it, the stranger it felt. The walls were stone, close to a foot thick, the kind you build against a siege, not a winter. The windows had interior shutters, heavy wooden ones that bolted from the inside with iron hardware that had been oiled recently and often. A wood stove, a propane line, a radio set on a desk beside a logbook so thick it had been rebound more than once, and by the front door, mounted at head height and angled down toward the porch, an old mirror in a wooden frame, positioned so you could stand inside and see who was standing outside without ever putting your face to the glass. None of it was the architecture of a place built to help hikers. It was the architecture of a place built to keep something out and to watch it while it tried to get in. I told myself it was an old building, and old buildings are strange, and a man who's just driven 4 hours alone will see meaning in anything. I lit the stove. I made coffee, and when the light started going amber and long through the trees, I sat down at the desk, pulled the laminated card toward me under the lamp, and started to read the orders. There were 6 of them. I read them twice. Then I laughed. That was my first mistake. I'm going to give them to you the way they were given to me, because you should hear them in the order I did. They were typed, actually typed, on a machine, the letters slightly uneven on a sheet of Park Service letterhead. So old the logo was a design they stopped using before I was born. At the bottom was a signature and a title, a district supervisor, and a date from decades back. I looked him up later. He'd been dead a long time. The orders read, 1. At the 0300 radio check, give your badge number only. Never your name. If the voice answering uses your name, it is not dispatch. End the call. Do not key the mic again until sunrise. 2. If a fire appears on Saddle Knob, you will hear a voice you recognize calling for help. There is no trail to Saddle Knob. No one is there. Log the time and bearing. Do not leave the station. Do not answer. 3. Switchback trail markers are painted on the uphill face only. Travel down. If a marker faces you while descending, you have been turned. Sit. Close your eyes. Wait until the creek is on your left. Then move. 4. You may bring a lost hiker onto the porch. You may not unlock the inner door until they tell you your name and today's date. Anything that cannot give the date remains outside until dawn, regardless of what it does. 5. Each dusk, count vehicles in the trailhead lot and lights on the far ridge. The numbers must match. More lights than cars means someone is being walked out who never drove in. Do not signal back. 6. If you wake before sunrise to total silence, no wind, no insects, no creek, do not open the shutters. The forest is waiting for someone to confirm morning. Wait for the first bird call you did not make. I sat her in the lamplight, and I thought, this isn't a safety protocol. This is the rule book to a children's game. The kind kids invent on a long summer evening, where every rule has a terrible consequence, and nobody can remember who made them up. It was absurd. It was beautifully, seriously absurd. And somebody dead had signed it, like policy. But I kept coming back to Rule 2. the way Dell had kept coming back to it. I read it a third time, slower. You will hear a voice you recognize calling for help. Not you might. Not you may hear a sound. The certainty of it. Whoever wrote this knew flatly that the person reading it would one day hear someone they loved screaming in the dark. And they had written the order anyway. Do not leave the station. Do not answer. I want you to understand what that rule did to me, specifically, sitting at that desk, because I had built my whole life around the opposite sentence. Somebody's out there calling for help, you go. That's not a job to me. That's the load-bearing wall of who I think I am. And the one time I obeyed a rule that told me to stand down instead. A boy named Aaron Pruitt spent his last hours alive 200 yards from where I stopped walking. So when I read an official order that said, if you hear someone begging for help, you sit in a stone box and write down the time, every instinct I had stood up at once and said, no. Not superstition, no. Moral, no. The kind of no that feels like the only decent thing left in a person. I made myself a promise right there in the lamplight. The way you do when you're certain and wrong at the same time. I thought, if I ever hear someone scream out in that forest, I don't care what's printed on a laminated card signed by a dead man. No rule is going to make me stand down a second time. Not again. Not ever. I felt good about that promise. That's the part I can't forgive. I almost put the card away then. But the lamp caught something ink in the margins, in the white space around the typed rules. Handwriting. Not one hand, several. Different pens, different pressures, the writing of different people across what must have been years. Little notes crammed into the edges, the way you'd annotate a manual you actually used. I leaned in close, and the laminate smelled faintly of old paper underneath. And I read them. Beside Rule 1, in a cramped, hard-pressed hand, it learned my name in March. Don't let it practice. Beside Rule 4, in a softer script, the letters trembling a little at the ends. Don't open the door. I'm sorry, Connie. I'm so sorry. Beside Rule 5, just a tally pencil marks, dozens of them, grouped in fives, crossed through, with no explanation at all. Someone had been counting something, night after night, until the counting filled the margin. And then I understood what the mirror by the door was for. You don't mount a mirror like that to check your hair. You mount it so you can see who's standing on your porch in the dark without giving them your face to look at. Every strange feature of that station, the thick walls, the inner shutters, the angled glass, somebody had thought about all of it, on purpose, because of fear. Specific fear, the kind you only earn. These weren't the notes of bored people inventing a game. These were the notes of frightened people, leaving warnings for whoever came next. I was whoever came next. I put the card in the desk drawer, and I told myself, again, that it was superstition, that mountain people are superstitious, that a lonely post does things to a mind. But I didn't quite believe it the way I had an hour before. I needed proof, one way or the other. The forest gave me some. It just took its time. The first few days were good. I need you to know that too, because the good days are what make the rest of it so hard to hold in your head. I worked. There's a rhythm to a ranger post, even a winter caretaker's, and I fell into it, like a man easing into warm water. I checked the propane and the generator and split wood for the stove until my shoulders ached in the honest way. I patrolled the switchback trail in the mornings, logging the few late-season day hikers who came up, a retired couple from Asheville, a pair of college kids with too little water and too much confidence. I checked permits. I reconciled the trailhead log. I radioed dispatch on schedule, badge number only. And a bored voice 3 valleys away said, "Copy," and that was that. The forest in daylight was honestly one of the most beautiful places I've ever worked. Pileated woodpeckers hammering somewhere out of sight. The creek loud and bright and cold enough to ache your teeth. I ate a sandwich on a flat rock one afternoon, with my boots hanging over the water, and felt, for the length of that sandwich, like a person again. Like maybe Dell was just a tired old man, and the card was just folklore, and quiet really could put a man back together one ordinary day at a time. That's the contrast I'd ask you to hold on to. A man healing in a beautiful wood, doing honest work, believing in the ordinary. Because that same afternoon, hiking back down, I noticed the light was failing earlier than it should have. Much earlier. The sun wasn't where the sky said it should be. I checked my watch, and the time was wrong, or the light was wrong, and I couldn't make the two of them agree. I told myself I'd lost track of the hour. I picked up my pace down the trail toward the station. That's when I passed the marker. The switchback trail markers are simple. Wooden posts, a number, and an arrow routed into the wood. And by the rule I'd half memorized and wholly dismissed, painted only on the uphill face. The idea being that if you're walking down the way you should, you never see the painted side. You see bare wood. The paint is for people coming up. I was going down, and the marker I came to was painted, bright, facing me. The number, the arrow, the worn green paint, all of it turned toward a man descending, which according to the card meant exactly one thing. I stopped. My mouth went dry in a way I noticed and didn't like. I told myself the obvious things that I'd gotten turned around at a switchback, that anyone could, that the trail doubled back on itself a dozen times, and it would be easy to lose your sense of which way was down. Rational explanations. I'm good at those. Then I listened for the creek. The creek had been on my left the whole hike down. I'd been listening to it for an hour. Now it was on my right, loud, close, unmistakably on the wrong side, and I had not crossed it. There is no version of that trail where the creek moves from your left to your right without you fording it, and my boots were dry. The card said, "Sit, close your eyes, wait until the creek is on your left." I sat down on the cold ground right there in the trail. I felt absurd. I felt like a grown man playing a child's game alone in the woods. I closed my eyes, and I listened to water running on the wrong side of me, and I waited. I don't know how long enough that my hands got cold. And then, gradually, the way you'd never catch if you were watching for it, the sound of the creek slid across me right, then somehow everywhere, then left, on my left, where it belonged. I opened my eyes. The marker in front of me showed bare wood. I didn't sit and think about it. I ran. I ran the rest of the way down with my pack slapping against my back and my breath loud in my own ears. and I told myself it was fatigue, dehydration, a trick of a tired mind on an unfamiliar trail. I almost had myself convinced by the time I bolted the door behind me. Then it got to be 3 in the morning. The 0300 radio check is the loneliest thing in the world, even when nothing is wrong with it. You set an alarm. You drag yourself up out of sleep in a cold stone room with the stove burned down to coals, and you sit at the desk in the dark and key the mic and say a number into a box, and a stranger somewhere says a word back. And that's your one human contact in the deep middle of the night. The first few nights, it was exactly that ordinary. I'd give my badge number. A flat, tired dispatcher would say, "Copy, Hollow Ridge," and I'd go back to bed and lie there, listening to the generator hum until sleep took me again. I'd stopped being afraid of Rule 1. It felt like the silliest of the 6. Give a number, not a name, fine, whatever. It cost me nothing. The third night was different. I keyed the mic at 0300 and gave my badge number, the way I had every night, expecting the flat copy. And the voice that came back wasn't flat. It was warm. It had a smile in it. It was the voice of someone who knew me and was glad to hear from me at 3 in the morning, which is not a thing dispatchers are. It said, "Copy that, Wes." Just that. My name. Said gently, said personally. Said by a voice on a frequency where I had given nothing but a number. On a night when no living person within 40 miles knew my first name was Wes. Every hair on my arms stood up at once. I sat there with the mic in my hand, and the card's first line went off in my head like an alarm. If the voice answering uses your name, it is not dispatch. I had laughed at that line. I wasn't laughing. My chest had gone tight, and my thumb was still resting on the key, and the voice was waiting, friendly and patient, for me to answer it back. I did the only thing the card told me to do, and I'll be honest, I almost didn't manage it. I took my thumb off the key. I set the mic down on the desk, slowly, like it might wake something if I moved too fast, and I sat back in the chair in the dark, and I did not say a single word. The voice kept talking anyway. "Wes," it said, through the speaker, warm and easy. "You there? Long night, huh? You've had a lot of long nights." A pause, with static breathing under it. "I know about Aaron, Wes. I know you didn't quit. I know it wasn't your fault." My eyes stung. I want to be honest with you about that, because it's the cruelty of the thing, the precision of it. It wasn't growling at me. It wasn't threatening me. It had found the softest, rawest place in me on its third night of trying, and it was pressing on it with something that sounded exactly like kindness. Then the voice changed. Mid-sentence, without a seam, it became the flat, bored dispatcher I'd talked to every other night, the real one. The cadence perfect, the tiredness perfect. "Hollow Ridge, you're breaking up. Say again your status." Then back to the warm one. "Just answer me, Wes. Just say something." I reached out and I turned the radio off. The whole unit. The little power light died, and the room went quiet, except for the generator and my own breathing, which was too fast. I sat in that chair until the window went gray. I didn't sleep. When the light came up, I turned the radio back on with a hand that wasn't steady and made contact with dispatch the real dispatch, the flat voice, the morning operator. I asked, as casually as I could manage, whether they'd called the station overnight. There was a pause while she checked the log. "Negative, Hollow Ridge," she said. "Nothing logged after your 0300. Why, you have a problem with the set." I told her the set was fine. The card had told me the truth, every word of it. And if Rule 1 was real, really, provably real, then I already knew, sitting there in the gray morning with my coffee going cold, that Rule 2 was real too. And Rule 2 had promised me a voice I recognized, out on a ridge in the dark. I just didn't yet know whose. It was a clear, hard-frozen night, about a week later, when I saw the fire. I was at the desk, doing the evening log, when something pulled my eyes to the window, a color that didn't belong. Out across the dark folds of the valley, on the high, bald shoulder of land I'd marked on the station map as Saddle Knob, there was a small orange light. A fire. The unmistakable live flicker of an open flame, low and steady, exactly where the map showed no trail, no campsite, no way for a human being to be. I stood up so fast, the chair went over behind me, and then, riding down the cold air the way sound carries on a still night in the mountains, came the voice. Thin with distance, but absolutely clear. A young voice, a boy's voice, calling my name. It was Aaron Pruitt. I had heard that voice on a radio 15 years ago, asking which way to go, and I had heard it in my sleep 1,000 nights since. There was no mistaking it. "Mr. Hargrove," it called, from a ridge where a dead boy could not be. "Mr. Hargrove, please don't stop walking this time. Please, I'm right here. Don't turn back again." I gripped the door frame with both hands. I want to describe exactly what that was like, because I think it matters that you understand it wasn't a haunting. It was a wound. It was the single sentence I had been trying not to say to myself for 15 years, spoken out loud in the dark by the voice that had a right to say it. Don't turn back again. The card was in the drawer. There is no trail to Saddle Knob. No one is there. Do not leave the station. Do not answer. My hand was already on the door. I told myself I would only look. I told myself I'd take a bearing, the way the rule said, and I'd come right back. I told myself a lot of things, and not one of them was true. And somewhere under all of them, I knew it. I unbolted the door. I stepped off the porch onto frozen gravel that crunched under my boots, and I started up toward the fire. The forest changed as I climbed. I want to be careful here, because this is the part that's hardest to put into honest words. It wasn't that things jumped out at me. It was that things left. The ordinary night sounds the wind in the spruce, the distant water. The small movements of living things peeled away one layer at a time the higher I went, until I was walking through a silence that had weight to it. A silence that felt like being underwater. My flashlight beam seemed to stop a few feet in front of me, swallowed, like the dark was thicker up there than dark should be, and the fire never got closer. I climbed for what my leg said was 20 minutes, then 30, toward a light that stayed exactly the same size, exactly the same distance, no matter how hard I walked. And the voice, Aaron's voice, got happier the closer I came. That's the detail that finally reached the cold, rational part of me that does this for a living. A scared, hurt boy doesn't get happier as help approaches. He gets more desperate, more relieved. He breaks down. This voice was delighted. It was the delight of something that had been patient for a very long time and was watching its patience pay off. Halfway up that slope, in that swallowing dark, with the fire hanging in front of me like a painted thing, I understood, with my whole body, what my mind had been refusing. It had never been a boy. It had never been Aaron. It had only ever been the shape my guilt made when something out here pressed its mouth to it. And then, ahead of me, on the trail that wasn't a trail, a figure stepped out of the dark, wearing a ranger's hat, and stood there waiting for me. "You don't want to keep going up," the figure said. "Come down with me. Slow. Don't look back at the fire." He was an old man, Park Service green, gone gray with age and weather, a flat brim hat, a badge so dull it didn't catch my flashlight. He stood easy, hands loose at his sides, the way a man stands when he's been somewhere a long time, and nothing about it surprises him anymore. He turned and started downhill, and after a moment, because the alternative was to keep climbing toward a fire that wanted me, I followed. He walked me all the way back, downhill the whole way, never once up, never once stopping. He didn't say much on the descent, just kept a slow, steady pace, and once, when I started to turn my head toward the orange light still burning behind us, he said quietly, "Eyes front." And I kept them front. We came out of the swallowing dark into the ordinary dark, and the wind came back, and the creek came back, and then the station was in front of me with its lamp still burning in the window. He came inside. He bolted the shutters himself, methodically, like a man who'd done it 10,000 times. And only when the last one was secured did he sit down across the desk from me and really look at me. "My name's Wren," he said. "I've worked this ridge a long time." "I didn't know there was another ranger up here," I said. Something passed over his face. "There's always somebody up here," he said. "You met Dell. Dell made it out. Not everybody does." He paused. "You read the notes in the margins of that card?" I nodded. "Connie," he said softly. "Dell. Others before them. I knew all of them." And the way he said it, knew, past tense, all of them sat wrong in the warm room, though I couldn't say why yet. I asked him the question I'd been carrying since the first night. "What are the rules for? What is this place?" Wren folded his hands on the desk. "The rules aren't about bears," he said. "They aren't about weather, or lost tourists, or any of the things you put in a report. People come up into these woods, and the forest takes some of them, always has, long before the park, long before that sign on the road. And when it takes a person, it doesn't just make them gone. It learns them, their face, their walk, the sound of their name in their mother's mouth. And then it uses what it learned to reach the next one." I thought about the voice on the radio that knew about Aaron. I thought about the fire that wore Aaron's voice like a coat. "The rules are a quarantine," Wren went on. 6 little fences. 1 person, 1 season, holding the door shut so the thing can't get a proper grip on the world. Every rule is somebody's death, written down so the next caretaker doesn't have to die the same way to learn it. He looked at me steadily. And rule 2 is the one no human being can be talked into keeping. Because it doesn't send a monster. It sends the person you'd give your life to save. It already knows you won't sit still for that. You proved it tonight. It used Aaron, I said. My voice came out rough. It uses whatever's the deepest cut, Wren said. For you, that's a boy you couldn't save. It's had a good look at you now, Wes. You opened the door, and you walked toward it. It has your voice, and your face, and your name, and the exact shape of the thing you can't forgive yourself for. It got more from you tonight than it's gotten from a caretaker in years. He stood up. If you want to understand what you've signed on to, read the old logbooks, cabinet behind the desk. They'll show you how this ends. It always ends the same way. The cabinet behind the desk was locked, but the smallest key on the station ring fit it, and inside were the logbooks, not the slim current one I'd been writing in, but a stack of them, bound and rebound. The oldest with a cover gone soft as cloth, and a date inside the front. 1923. I sat on the cold floor with the lamp pulled to the edge of the desk, and I read by its light, and the smell of old paper filled my head, dry and faintly sweet. And what I found wasn't ghost stories. It was worse than ghost stories. It was bookkeeping. Every caretaker, all the way back, had kept Rule 5, every single evening, in every single hand, the same 2 columns, cars in the trailhead lot, lights on the far ridge, night after night, year after year, decade after decade, and the numbers were supposed to match. They almost never did. Lights outnumbered cars by 1, by 3. On some nights and some years, by a dozen or more. Page after page of a tally that always ran the wrong way. An arithmetic of people who had walked out of these woods after dark without ever having driven in. And tucked between the pages, pressed flat like leaves, going brittle, were newspaper clippings. Missing hikers, lost day trippers, a scout troop that came back 1 short. The dates on the clippings matched the dates on the high count nights. And next to several of those same dates, in the log itself, in the caretaker's own steady hand, was the notation, "Party walked out safely." All accounted for. The official record said everyone came home. The clippings, slipped in beside them by the same trembling hand, said otherwise. The count was never wrong. It was never an error. It was a body count, kept honestly by frightened people who weren't allowed to write the truth in the official column. I found the recent ones near the top of the stack. Dell's journal, frantic toward the end, the handwriting deteriorating page by page. He'd heard his late wife on the radio. He'd started to answer her more than once. The last legible entry was 3 words underlined so hard the pen had torn the paper. Don't answer her. After that, he'd run. He'd left his coat on the hook and run. And I understood now why he wouldn't cross the threshold to get it. And below his, an older book, a woman's careful script on the flyleaf. C. Hadley. Connie. Connie's journal was the one that stayed with me. For most of a winter, she wrote like a professional counts. Weather, observations, the small, dry humor of a person alone. And then, near the end, the porch. She wrote that she'd brought a hiker up onto the porch at dusk, soaked and shivering, and that the hiker had her daughter's voice. Her daughter, she noted in an earlier entry, had died 2 years before. She wrote, It knows the date sometimes. It's getting better at the date. And then her last entry simply stopped, mid-sentence, the pen trailing off the edge of the word, as if she'd stood up in the middle of writing it and gone to the door. Both of them, Dell and Connie, had written the same warning to whoever came next. Keep Rule 2, whatever it costs you. Keep Rule 2. I had already broken it, and both of them noted the same thing in their final days. The same small symptom before the end. A morning of total, perfect silence. It always starts with a quiet morning, Connie had written. I closed the book. Outside, the wind was still moving in the spruce. For now. In the morning, I tried to leave. I'm not ashamed of that. I'd read the books. I understood what I was inside of. And the rational, professional part of me said the correct move was to drive off this mountain and never come back and let them find some other fool for the post. I packed the truck. I turned the key. The fire road was closed. The first real snow had come in overnight, heavier up here than down low, and it had drifted across the high switchbacks deep enough that the truck wouldn't take it. I tried anyway, until I nearly put the front end into the ditch, and then I backed down and sat with the engine running and made myself think. On foot, then. I knew this trail. I'd worked rescues and worse. I shouldered a pack, and I started down the switchback on foot, watching my markers, watching the creek. And the trail betrayed me exactly the way the card had warned. The markers began to face me. I'd sit and close my eyes and wait for the creek to find its way to my left. And I'd move again. And 20 minutes later, there'd be another painted marker facing me, the creek on the wrong side again. An hour of descending, then another, always going down. And then the trees opened, and I walked out into a clearing I knew. And it was the station, my own porch, my own boot prints in the snow, leading away and circling back. The forest wasn't going to let me leave. I understood it then, fully, in my body. I wasn't the caretaker anymore. I was inventory. Something the woods had started processing the night I stepped off the porch and didn't intend to release until it was finished. That night, something knocked on the door, and it said my name. I went to the mirror first. I had learned that much. I stood inside, away from the glass, and I looked at the angled reflection of the porch. And there, on the boards, in the cold, was Aaron Pruitt, 16 years old, soaked through as if he'd just come out of the river, shivering, his lips going blue, his arms wrapped around himself. Exactly as I'd have found him if I'd kept walking that night 15 years ago. He looked up, not at me. He couldn't see me at the door, and he said, "Mr. Hargrove, I'm so cold. Please let me in. Please." Rule 4. I did not unbolt the inner door. I spoke through it instead, and my voice shook, and I asked the only question the card allowed. "What's today's date?" A pause. "It's the 14th, it said, the day Aaron died." Then, quickly, "No, it's yesterday. It's the day you came up here, Mr. Hargrove, you remember?" Then a date that was not a date at all. Numbers that didn't go together. A month that doesn't exist. It couldn't find today. It had every day it had ever stolen, and it could not find the one we were standing in. I kept the door bolted. The boy on the porch wept and begged and pressed his hands flat against the wood and called me by name through the long hours of the dark. Every minute of it was the worst minute of my life, because obeying that rule felt exactly like turning back on Aaron a second time on purpose, by choice, with him an arm's length away and freezing. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, and I shook, and I did not open it. At first light, the porch was empty, no prints in the snow. At dusk, I made myself do the count, because by then I understood the count was the only honest instrument left to me. Trailhead lot. 0 cars. The road had been closed for 2 days. There couldn't be any, and there weren't. Far ridge. I lost count at 30. Lights. Small, steady lights strung out along the dark shoulder of the mountains, and as I watched, they were moving slowly in a loose procession, all of them drifting in the same direction, toward the high bald of Saddle Knob. Some of the lights were low to the ground and small, and I knew, the way you know things you have no business knowing, that those were children. Wren was standing beside me at the window. I hadn't heard him come in. I'd stopped questioning how he came and went. "It's gathering," he said quietly, watching the lights move. "It does this before it takes a warden. Pulls in everything it's collected, all at once, like drawing a breath. You've seen the count run high before. You haven't seen it run like this." He looked at me, and for the first time, there was something almost gentle in his weathered face, and it frightened me more than anything had yet. "Your season's almost over, Wes." "What happens," I asked, "when it's over?" "The last night tests all of them at once," Wren said. "Every rule, together. And when it does..." He turned back to the window, to the river of lights flowing toward the knob. "I won't be able to help you. You need to understand that part now. The last night, you're on your own." The last night came 3 days later, and it came the way Wren said it would. All at once. It started at the radio. I hadn't keyed it, hadn't touched it, but it crackled to life on its own at 300, and a voice came through giving my badge number, then my name, then answering questions I hadn't asked my own voice. I realized. My exact voice, calm and reasonable, saying, "Copy. This is Hargrove. Everything's fine up here. Send the next one. Rule 1, break in itself." Then the window lit orange, the fire on Saddle Knob bigger than before, and 2 voices on the wind now, Aaron, and underneath it, impossibly, my mother, who has been gone 11 years, both of them calling me up the mountain. Rule 2, pulling. Then the knocking started on the porch. Rule 4. And when I made myself look in the mirror, there wasn't one figure out there. There were several, soaked and shivering and patient, all of them turned toward the door. And when I glanced at the far ridge through the gap in the shutters, the lights were everywhere, more than I could ever count. The whole mountain wearing them, like a coat. Rule 5, off the scale. I moved between them. That's all I can tell you about the next, while I moved between the shutters and the mirror and the dead radio and the bolted door, obeying all 6 fences at once, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the iron bolts, certain that I was going to miss one, that there were 6 rules, and only one of me, and the math was never going to hold. And then the dead radio crackled again, and a new voice came through Wren's voice, and it said, "Wes, stop. There's only one way to end the season. You have to break a rule on purpose. Listen to me." I stood over the radio with my heart going like a hammer, and Wren's voice came out of it, calm as ever. "It doesn't let a warden just finish and walk down the mountain," he said. "That's not how the season ends. Every caretaker, when their time's up, gets a choice. You either get taken pulled up to the knob with all the rest, or you stay. You become the one who walks the next newcomer down the trail, the one who keeps the door. You become me, Wes. Season after season. That's the offer. That's how I got here. I broke Rule 2, too, a long time ago, and I was given the same 2 doors you're about to be given." And as he said it, as the warmth and the patience and the helpfulness of his voice came through that speaker that I had turned off, that had no power, light burning, I finally understood the thing that had been sitting wrong since the trail. Wren walked me down on my first night the way something walks its prey somewhere quieter. Wren knew all of them. Past tense, all of them. Wren had been on this ridge a long time, longer than any living man works a post. Wren had bolted my shutters with the ease of 10,000 nights. Wren had been dead for decades. Wren was the kindest mask the forest owned. Even my rescuer, especially my rescuer, was bait. "Hold the door for the next one, Wes," Wren's voice said, gentle as a hand on the shoulder. "It's not so bad. You're never really alone up here." There was no clean door. There had never been one. Taken or Warden, both of them were the forest winning. I did the only thing neither door accounted for. I reached out, and I turned the radio off again, and I refused to choose at all. And the moment I did, every sound on the mountain stopped at once. I woke. I must have slept, or something near it, into a silence so total it had a pressure to it, like deep water. No wind in the spruce, no insects, no creak, not a generator, not the settle of the stove, not my own pulse in my ears, nothing. Rule 6. If you wake to total silence, do not open the shutters. The forest is waiting for someone to confirm morning. Connie ended here. Dell came to the edge of here. It always starts with a quiet morning. I lay still on the cot, and I did not move, and I did not open the shutters. The card said, "Wait for the first bird call you did not make." So I waited. I waited while the silence pressed in, and the gap in the shutters slowly grayed, and the part of my mind that wanted this to be over screamed at me to just look, just open it, just confirm that the sun was up and the night was done, and it was a normal morning. That's the trap. The forest needs you to say, "It's morning." It can't close the day on its own. It needs the warden to confirm it. And the moment you do, the loop shuts around you, and you're the next wren, walking newcomers down the trail forever. I lay there for what I swear was hours. My whole body ached with the stillness. My mouth was dry as paper. And then, from somewhere far off, faint, real, came a single bird call. A small thing. A note I had not made, and could not have made. I let out a breath I'd been holding so long it hurt. I waited for one more. Then I opened the shutters. It was morning. An ordinary, blinding, snow-bright morning. The creek was running. The road, when I checked it, was plowed by whom? I never learned. The season was over. I had not chosen either door. I packed the truck, and this time it took the road, and I drove down off Hollow Ridge. But I want to be honest with you about that morning. I don't actually know if the bird was real. I survived. I left the mountain. I want to be clear that the rest of this didn't happen up there in the dark. It happens here, in the ordinary world, in daylight, where you live. Because I brought the count home with me, I can't stop doing it. I sit in a diner, and I count the cars in the lot, and I count the people inside. And somewhere in the back of my mind, the two columns are always running. And I can tell you, I don't know how, but I can tell you which of those people the world is quietly walking out. There's a quality to them, a faint extra light, like the lights on the far ridge that no one else seems to see. A man at the next table, laughing with his wife, already lit. A kid in a checkout line. The forest didn't take me. That's what I finally understood. It did something I think is worse. It tuned me. It left me here and changed what I'm able to see, so that the gathering I watched flow towards Saddle Knob, I see it now everywhere, in cities, in daylight, all the time. It never stopped. It's happening around you right now, and you can't see it, and I can. I used to think the horror was a thing that lived up on that mountain, behind those shutters, contained by 6 little fences. It isn't contained. The mountain was just the only place quiet enough for somebody to finally notice it. That's not even the worst part. The worst part is what answers when I'm alone, because I broke Rule 2, because I unbolted that door and stepped off that porch and walked up toward the fire with my whole heart open. The forest got a full and finished copy of me. My face, my name, my voice, the exact shape of the thing I can't forgive myself for. It finished its work that night, and it took the work with it, and now it has me the way it had Aaron. So some nights my phone rings. I'll be alone, late, and it'll light up on the table, and the number on the screen is my own. And when I'm weak enough, or tired enough, or sad enough to answer it, I hear myself on the line, warm, reasonable, kind, the way that radio voice was kind. My own voice telling me that there's someone up on the ridge who needs help. That this time I won't be too late. That I should come back. That I should keep walking. It uses Aaron. It uses my mother. It uses the date I turned back. It uses me in my own voice, with my own guilt. And it is endlessly, endlessly patient. Wren told me on that last night, gentle as anything, one night you'll answer. You're probably wondering why I'm telling you any of this. The truth is, so am I. So is the part of me that's already, quietly, without quite deciding to, started packing a bag. So here's why I'm really telling you this. Not for sympathy. I'm past that. Hollow Ridge needs a caretaker again. The winter post is open right now, I checked, the way I check everything now. And I know exactly how that posting reads to the right kind of person. Solitary, remote, no public rescue duties. It reads like peace. It reads like a place to put yourself back together. It reads like absolution to anyone carrying the kind of weight that makes a person want to disappear into a quiet wood and stop being responsible for anyone's life but their own. That's how it read to me. That's how it read to Dell, to Connie, to Wren, longer ago than I want to think about. The forest doesn't advertise. It doesn't need to. It just leaves the door open and trusts that the right, tired, guilty person will walk through it on their own, the way I did, certain they're choosing rest. So if you ever find yourself reading a winter caretaker posting forestation in the southern Appalachians, and it feels like exactly the mercy you've been needing, I'm telling you the rules now, so that when you find them laminated on that desk under the lamp, you won't laugh the way I did. You'll read all 6. You'll read the notes in the margins. And you will keep every single one. Especially Rule 2. Especially the night you hear the voice you'd give anything to save. I have to go now. The phone is ringing again. It's my own number on the screen. I'm looking at it as I say this. I'm not going to answer it. I want you to hear me say that. Because I've said it to myself every night for the better part of a year. And saying it out loud used to be enough. I'm not going to answer. I have a chain on my door and a life down here, such as it is. And I know what's on the other end of that call, and knowing is supposed to be protection. But I'll tell you the thing that scares me more than the ringing. Last week, the fire road up to Hollow Ridge reopened for the season I saw the notice, the way I see everything now. And this morning I went out to the truck for something ordinary, and I found that the tank was full. I'd filled it. I don't remember filling it. I don't remember deciding to. But there it was, topped off and ready, pointed. If you let a truck point anywhere, north and up. I don't know if I'll be here next season. I've made my peace with not knowing, which is its own kind of giving up. So if you take that job, and someone always takes that job, do the count every dusk. Watch the markers on the way down. Keep the door bolted till they can name the day. And whatever you do, whatever it sounds like, whoever it sounds like out there in the dark, don't go up the knob. The phone's still ringing.